It was a quiet evening, the kind where the world outside seemed to slow down just enough for people to catch their breath. Keanu Reeves, the man known around the globe for his roles in action-packed movies and heartfelt dramas, found himself in a rare moment of calm. The day's work had been long but satisfying, filled with rehearsals and meetings that left little room for anything else. Now, sitting in the comfort of his cozy living room, he finally had time to relax. The soft glow of a table lamp illuminated the space, casting warm shadows on the walls. A cup of steaming tea rested in his hands as he leaned back into the cushions of his couch, letting out a contented sigh. Keanu wasn't one to spend much time watching television. He preferred books or music when he wanted to unwind, but tonight felt different. There was something about the stillness of the room that made him curious. He picked up the remote and began flipping through channels absent-mindedly. Reality shows, news programs, sports highlights, all passed by in a blur until something caught his eye. It wasn't flashy or loud. In fact, it was quite the opposite. On the screen was an interview show featuring ordinary yet extraordinary individuals who had stories worth sharing. Intrigued, Keanu paused and turned up the volume slightly, settling in to see what this episode had to offer. The host greeted the audience with a warm smile before introducing the next guest. "Tonight," he announced, "we have someone truly special joining us, a remarkable educator whose dedication has touched countless lives." As the camera panned to reveal the guest, Keanu froze mid-sip of his tea. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized the familiar face immediately. It was Mrs. Evelyn Carter, his high school English teacher. For a moment, he thought he might be imagining things. How could it be her? Decades had passed since those days in the classroom, yet there she was, looking older but no less radiant, her eyes sparkling with wisdom and kindness. Memories came rushing back like waves crashing against the shore. Keanu remembered the way Mrs. Carter used to walk into the classroom each morning, carrying stacks of books and papers with an air of quiet authority. She wasn't the type to raise her voice or demand attention. She didn't need to. Her presence alone commanded respect. He recalled how she would always begin class with a thought-provoking question or quote, encouraging students to think beyond the surface level. Back then, Keanu had been a shy teenager, often retreating into himself rather than speaking up. But Mrs. Carter had noticed him. She saw something in him that others might have missed, a spark of creativity, a depth of emotion, and she nurtured it patiently. As the host welcomed Mrs. Carter onto the stage, Keanu couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nostalgia. Watching her now, surrounded by bright studio lights and cameras, felt surreal. This was the same woman who had once stood at the front of a modest classroom, scribbling notes on a chalkboard and offering words of encouragement to restless teenagers. Yet here she was, being celebrated on national television, sharing her story with millions of viewers. Keanu leaned forward, gripping his teacup tightly, eager to hear what she had to say. Mrs. Carter greeted the host with a polite handshake and took her seat, smiling warmly at the audience. Her demeanor was calm and composed, exuding the same grace she had shown all those years ago. The host began the conversation by asking about her journey as a teacher. "What inspired you to dedicate your life to education?" he asked, genuinely curious. Mrs. Carter hesitated for a brief moment as if gathering her thoughts, before responding with a sincerity that resonated deeply. "Teaching isn't just a job," she explained. "It's a calling. Every child has potential, even if they don't realize it yet. My goal has always been to help them discover that potential and believe in themselves." Her words struck a chord with Keanu, transporting him back to his own teenage years. He remembered the times when he doubted himself, unsure of where he fit in or what path to take. Those were difficult days, marked by personal struggles and uncertainty about the future. But Mrs. Carter had been a steady figure during that turbulent period. She never pushed too hard, but she also never let him settle for less than his best. Whether it was through thoughtful feedback on his essays or a simple nod of approval during class discussions, she had a way of making him feel seen and valued. The host nodded appreciatively at Mrs. Carter's response and continued the interview. "You must have taught so many students over the years," he remarked. "Are there any who stand out in your memory?" Keanu's breath hitched as he waited for her reply. Would she mention him? Did she even remember him after all these years? Part of him hoped she wouldn't. It felt strange to think of himself as someone noteworthy. But another part yearned to hear his name spoken aloud, to know that he had made an impression on her as well. Mrs. Carter tilted her head thoughtfully, her expression softening as she reflected on the question. "There are many students I think of fondly," she admitted, "but there's one in particular who comes to mind whenever I'm asked this." Her gaze met the camera lens as if searching for someone specific among the viewers. Keanu's pulse quickened. Could it really be him? He braced himself, unsure whether he was ready for what she might say next. Little did he know, the words that followed would leave an indelible mark on his heart, one that would linger long after the show ended. For now, though, Keanu remained transfixed, unable to look away from the screen. Each word Mrs. Carter spoke carried weight, not just because of its meaning, but because of the memories it stirred within him. He realized, in that moment, how much he owed to teachers like her, not just for the lessons they taught in the classroom, but for the lessons they imparted about life itself. And as the interview unfolded, Keanu knew he was about to embark on a journey of reflection, gratitude, and rediscovery, one that would remind him of the power of human connection and the lasting impact of a single act of kindness. Mrs. Carter's voice carried a warmth that seemed to fill the entire studio, reaching far beyond the cameras and microphones. She paused for a moment, her eyes glistening as if she were sifting through countless memories stored deep within her heart. "There's one student who stands out in my mind," she said softly, almost as though she were speaking directly to Keanu through the screen. He was quiet, very reserved, but there was something about him that caught my attention right away. Keanu sat frozen on his couch, his teacup now resting untouched on the table beside him. Every word felt like it was meant just for him. He wasn't the type to raise his hand or dominate class discussions, Mrs. Carter continued, her tone thoughtful yet full of admiration. But when he did speak, it was always meaningful. He had this way of observing the world around him, almost as if he were taking mental notes, processing everything before sharing his thoughts. Keanu could feel his cheeks flush with a mix of pride and embarrassment. He remembered those days vividly, the awkwardness of adolescence, the struggle to find his place among peers who seemed so much more confident than he was. Back then, he never imagined anyone would notice him at all, let alone remember him years later. The host leaned forward slightly, clearly intrigued by Mrs. Carter's description. "What made him stand out?" he asked gently, sensing the depth of emotion behind her words. Mrs. Carter smiled, a hint of nostalgia playing on her lips. "It wasn't just his intelligence, though he certainly had that," she replied. "It was his creativity. I'll never forget the essays he wrote. They weren't just assignments to him, they were windows into his soul. Through his words, I could see how deeply he felt things, how much he cared about the people and experiences in his life." Keanu's mind raced back to those writing assignments. At the time, he hadn't thought much of them. He simply poured his thoughts onto paper because it felt natural, like breathing. But hearing Mrs. Carter describe them now with such reverence made him realize their significance. One essay in particular came flooding back to him. It was about loss, the kind of loss no teenager should have to endure. His parents' separation had left a void in his life, and while he rarely spoke about it, he found solace in writing. That essay had been raw and honest, a reflection of his pain and confusion. When Mrs. Carter returned it with glowing feedback, Keanu had felt seen in a way he hadn't before. For the first time, someone acknowledged his struggles without pity, validating his feelings instead of dismissing them. Mrs. Carter went on to share another story, one that brought an unexpected lump to Keanu's throat. There was a day when the school library needed help organizing books after hours, she recalled. Most students wouldn't have given it a second thought. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but he stayed behind anyway. He didn't say much, just quietly worked alongside me, stacking shelves and sorting titles. It wasn't until later that I realized why he did it. He wasn't doing it for recognition or extra credit. He was doing it because he genuinely wanted to contribute, to make a small difference in his own quiet way. Keanu remembered that afternoon vividly. The library had been dimly lit, the only sounds coming from the rustle of pages and the occasional creak of wooden shelves. He hadn't planned to stay late that day, but when Mrs. Carter mentioned needing assistance, something inside him urged him to volunteer. Maybe it was because she had always treated him with kindness, or maybe it was because he understood what it meant to feel invisible and wanted to ensure others didn't experience that same loneliness. Whatever the reason, he had stayed, working silently alongside her until the task was complete. To hear her recount it now, framing it as an act of selflessness, filled him with a sense of validation he hadn't known he needed. The host nodded appreciatively, clearly moved by Mrs. Carter's anecdotes. "It sounds like you saw something in him that others might have missed," he observed. Mrs. Carter's expression softened further, her eyes shining with affection. "Absolutely," she affirmed. "There are some students who shine brightly from the start, drawing attention, effortlessly. And then there are others like him who glow more subtly. You have to look closely to see it, but once you do, it's impossible to ignore. He was like a diamond hidden under layers of shyness and doubt. I always believed he'd emerge stronger, brighter, and truer to himself over time." Keanu felt tears welling up in his eyes, threatening to spill over. Hearing these words from someone he respected so deeply stirred emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Growing up, he often doubted his abilities, questioning whether he was good enough or capable of achieving anything significant. Yet here was Mrs. Carter, decades later, affirming everything he had hoped to be true about himself. Her belief in him, even all those years ago, had planted seeds of confidence that continued to grow throughout his life. The host turned to Mrs. Carter with a gentle smile. "Do you ever wonder what happened to your former students? Do you think about where they are now?" he asked. Mrs. Carter chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Of course I do," she admitted. "Every teacher does. We pour our hearts into our students, hoping we've made a positive impact, but we don't always get to see the results. Sometimes, though, life surprises us." She glanced toward the camera again, her gaze steady and knowing. "Take this young man, for example. I'm not surprised at all to see where he is today. He's exactly where he's meant to be." Keanu couldn't hold back the tears any longer. They streamed down his face, blurring his vision as he listened to Mrs. Carter's words. It wasn't just the praise that moved him. It was the realization that someone had believed in him long before he believed in himself. In that moment, he understood that success wasn't just about talent or hard work. It was also about the people who encouraged you along the way, who reminded you of your worth when you forgot it yourself. Mrs. Carter had been one of those people, and her faith in him had shaped him in ways he was only beginning to comprehend. The interview progressed. Keanu found himself reflecting on the countless other teachers, mentors, and supporters who had contributed to his journey. Each of them had played a role, however small, in helping him become the person he was today. But Mrs. Carter stood out, not because she was extraordinary, though she undoubtedly was, but because she had taken the time to truly see him. She had recognized his potential when he couldn't, and she had nurtured it with patience and care. By the time the segment ended, Keanu felt a renewed sense of gratitude. Sitting alone in his living room, surrounded by the quiet hum of the evening, he knew he couldn't let this moment pass without acknowledging it. He picked up his phone and dialed the number for the show's producers, determined to reach out to Mrs. Carter personally. As he waited for the call to connect, he thought about all the ways he could express his thanks, not just to her, but to everyone who had helped shape his path. This was more than just a reunion. It was a reminder of the profound impact one person can have on another's life. And for Keanu, it was a chance to honor that connection in the most meaningful way possible. After the emotional high of watching Mrs. Carter's interview, Keanu knew he couldn't let the moment slip away without reaching out. His mind raced with thoughts of how to express his gratitude properly. Words felt inadequate. How could he possibly thank someone who had played such a pivotal role in shaping the person he was today. Still, he wanted to try. Determined, he picked up his phone once again and dialed the number for the show's producers. After a brief conversation, they promised to connect him with Mrs. Carter directly. It didn't take long before the call came through. When Keanu heard her voice on the other end of the line, his heart swelled with emotion. "Mrs. Carter?" he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. There was a pause on the other side, followed by an audible gasp. "Keanu?" she replied, her tone filled with disbelief and joy. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply savored the connection, as if time itself had folded back to those days in the classroom. "I just watched your interview," Keanu began, struggling to find the right words. I don't even know where to start. Hearing you talk about me like that, it meant more than I can say." He paused, taking a deep breath to steady himself. On the other end, Mrs. Carter chuckled warmly. "Well, I meant every word," she said. "You were always special, Keanu." Even back then I could see it. Her response brought fresh tears to his eyes. It wasn't just the praise that moved him, it was the sincerity behind it. In that instant, Keanu realized something profound. Mrs. Carter's belief in him hadn't been fleeting or superficial. It had been genuine, unwavering, and rooted in the kind of understanding only a great teacher could offer. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me something far greater than knowledge. You gave me confidence when I needed it most." Mrs. Carter laughed lightly, her humility shining through. "Oh, Keanu, all I did was remind you of what you already had inside," she replied. "The strength, the creativity, the kindness, they were always yours. I just helped you see it." Her words resonated deeply, settling into Keanu's heart like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. He had spent so much of his life doubting himself, questioning whether he deserved the success he achieved. But now, hearing Mrs. Carter speak, he understood that his journey hadn't been about proving himself to others. It had been about recognizing his own worth. As their conversation continued, Keanu found himself opening up in ways he rarely did with anyone else. He told her about the challenges he faced growing up, the loneliness, the uncertainty, the fear of never being enough. He shared how her encouragement had been a lifeline during those difficult years, giving him the courage to keep going, even when things felt impossible. "I wish I could have told you back then how much you meant to me," he admitted. "But I didn't know how." Mrs. Carter listened intently, her voice gentle and reassuring. "You're telling me now," she said. "And that's what matters. Life is full of moments we can't fully appreciate until later. What's important is that you carried those lessons forward, and look at you now. You've become someone who inspires others, just like you inspired me." Her words struck a chord within Keanu. He had never thought of himself as someone who inspired others. He was simply doing his best to navigate life with integrity and compassion. Yet hearing Mrs. Carter describe him this way made him realize the ripple effect of kindness and mentorship. Just as she had lifted him up, he too had the power to uplift others. The realization filled him with a sense of purpose, igniting a desire to pay it forward. Their call lasted nearly an hour, each minute feeling like a gift. By the end, both Keanu and Mrs. Carter were teary-eyed but smiling. "I'm so proud of you, Keanu," she said before they hung up. "Never forget how far you've come, and how many people you've touched along the way." Those parting words stayed with him long after the call ended, echoing in his mind as he sat in silence, reflecting on everything they had discussed. In the days that followed, Keanu found himself thinking about Mrs. Carter constantly. Her influence had been subtle yet profound, shaping not only his academic journey but also his approach to life. She had taught him more than grammar and literature. She had taught him resilience, empathy, and the importance of believing in oneself. These lessons had stayed with him throughout his career, guiding him through the highs and lows of fame. Inspired by their reunion, Keanu decided to take action. He reached out to several schools and underserved communities, offering to visit and speak with students. At first, he hesitated, unsure whether his presence would make a difference. But then he remembered Mrs. Carter's belief in him, how her faith had changed his life, and he knew he had to try. If even one student walked away feeling seen and valued, it would be worth it. During these visits, Keanu shared stories from his own life, focusing not on his achievements, but on the struggles he had overcome. He talked about loss, self-doubt, and the importance of perseverance. He encouraged students to embrace their uniqueness, reminding them that everyone has something valuable to contribute. Most importantly, he emphasized the role of teachers and mentors in helping young people discover their potential. "There will be people in your life who believe in you before you believe in yourself," he told them. "Listen to them, trust them, and when you succeed, don't forget to thank them." The impact of these talks was immediate and powerful. Students approached Keanu afterward, sharing their dreams and fears with surprising candor. Many expressed gratitude for his honesty, saying it gave them hope. Teachers thanked him too, noting how his words reinforced the value of their work. Each interaction reminded Keanu of the bond he shared with Mrs. Carter, a bond built on trust, encouragement, and mutual respect. Meanwhile, Mrs. Carter watched from afar, following Keanu's efforts with pride. She saw how he channeled her teachings into meaningful action, using his platform to inspire the next generation. Though she remained humble, never seeking recognition for her role in his success, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Her faith in Keanu had come full circle, manifesting in ways she could have only dreamed of. For Keanu, these experiences became a reminder of the interconnectedness of life. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the potential to create waves of change. Mrs. Carter had planted a seed in him years ago, and now he was planting seeds of his own, nurturing the same values she had instilled in him. Together, their story became a testament to the enduring power of mentorship, a celebration of human connection, gratitude, and the transformative impact of believing in someone. Though their paths had diverged decades earlier, Keanu and Mrs. Carter remained forever linked by the invisible thread of influence and appreciation. Their relationship served as a beacon of hope, reminding others that even the smallest gestures of support can leave an indelible mark. And for Keanu, honoring Mrs. Carter's legacy became not just a personal mission, but a lifelong commitment, one that would continue to shape lives for years to come. Keanu's visits to schools quickly became a cherished part of his routine. Each time he stepped into a classroom or auditorium, he carried with him the lessons he had learned from Mrs. Carter. He didn't arrive as a celebrity seeking attention. Instead, he came as someone who understood what it felt like to be unsure, overlooked, and searching for direction. His presence alone was enough to captivate the students, but it was his message that truly resonated. During one such visit, Keanu stood in front of a group of high school seniors, many of whom were preparing to face the daunting transition into adulthood. The room buzzed with nervous energy as they waited for him to speak. Keanu took a deep breath, glancing around at the sea of young faces before beginning. "I wasn't always sure of myself," he admitted, his voice steady yet gentle. "In fact, there were times when I doubted whether I'd ever amount of anything. But I had people in my life, teachers, friends, family, who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." He paused, letting his words sink in. Some students nodded knowingly, while others leaned forward, hanging on every word. Keanu went on to share specific moments from his own journey, including the struggles he faced after his parents' separation and the challenges of navigating adolescence without clear answers. "It's okay to feel lost sometimes," he told them. "We all do. What matters is finding the courage to keep moving forward, even if you're not sure where you're headed." As he spoke, Keanu noticed a girl sitting near the back of the room. She looked hesitant, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if shielding herself from the world. Something about her demeanor reminded him of his younger self, the same quietness, the same uncertainty. After finishing his talk, he made his way toward her, offering a warm smile. "Hey," he said softly. "Mind if I sit with you for a bit?" The girl looked surprised but nodded shyly. As they talked, she opened up about her own struggles, how she often felt invisible, how she worried she wouldn't live up to her parents' expectations, and how hard it was to find her place among her peers. Keanu listened attentively, nodding, along as she spoke. When she finished, he shared a story from his past, one he hadn't mentioned during his presentation. "There was a teacher of mine, Mrs. Carter, who saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself," he explained. "She didn't just teach me English, she taught me that I mattered. And because of her, I started believing in myself." The girl's eyes widened, as if she hadn't considered the possibility that someone might see her in the same light. Do you think someone could see me like that?" she asked hesitantly. Keanu smiled warmly. "Absolutely," he replied. "People are watching you even if you don't realize it. Teachers, friends, family, they all want to help you succeed, you just have to let them." By the time their conversation ended, the girl seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. For Keanu, moments like these reaffirmed why he had chosen to dedicate his time to connecting with students. Back home, Keanu reflected on his growing efforts to give back. He realized that while fame brought opportunities, it also came with responsibility. It wasn't enough to simply inspire others through movies or interviews. He needed to show up in person, to create real connections and remind people that they weren't alone. With this in mind, he decided to expand his outreach beyond school visits. He began working with organizations focused on education and mentorship, funding scholarships and programs designed to support underprivileged youth. Through these initiatives, he hoped to amplify the impact of teachers like Mrs. Carter, ensuring that more students received the encouragement they needed to thrive. One evening, as Keanu sat at his desk reviewing proposals for a new scholarship program, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mrs. Carter. Her voice was cheerful yet tinged with curiosity. "So, I've been hearing about your school visits," she said. "Care to tell me more about what you're up to?" Keanu laughed, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. "Well, I figured it was time to pay it forward," he replied. "You inspired me to use my platform to help others, so here we are." Mrs. Carter sounded genuinely touched. "That's wonderful, Keanu," she said. "But remember, you don't have to do everything on your own. There are plenty of people who want to support you in this mission." Her advice struck a chord within him. Up until now, Keanu had approached his efforts largely independently, driven by a desire to honor Mrs. Carter's legacy. Yet her words reminded him of the importance of collaboration, a lesson she had taught him long ago in her classroom. Taking her advice to heart, Keanu reached out to fellow actors, educators, and community leaders, inviting them to join his cause. Together, they formed a coalition aimed at improving access to quality education and mentorship for underserved youth. Their combined efforts led to the creation of workshops, mentorship programs, and resources designed to empower students and teachers alike. Keanu marveled at how much they accomplished as a team, realizing once again that no one succeeds alone. Despite his busy schedule, Keanu made it a point to stay connected with Mrs. Carter. They spoke regularly, exchanging updates and sharing stories about their respective journeys. During one call, Mrs. Carter expressed her gratitude for the work he was doing. "You've taken the lessons I tried to teach and turned them into something beautiful," she said. "I couldn't be prouder." Her words filled Keanu with a profound sense of fulfillment. He knew that none of this would have been possible without her guidance and belief in him. Over time, Keanu's efforts began gaining recognition. News outlets highlighted his commitment to education, praising him not only for his acting career but also for his dedication to uplifting others. While the attention was flattering, Keanu remained humble, deflecting praise onto those who inspired him. "This isn't about me," he often said during interviews. "It's about honoring the people who helped shape me and making sure future generations have the same opportunities." Through it all, Keanu never lost sight of the values instilled in him by Mrs. Carter. Her teachings continued to guide him, reminding him to approach life with empathy, humility, and gratitude. Whether speaking to students, collaborating with colleagues, or reflecting on his own journey, he carried her wisdom with him, allowing it to inform every decision he made. By the time another year passed, Keanu's initiatives had grown significantly, reaching thousands of students across the country. Teachers reported seeing positive changes in their classrooms. Students were more engaged, confident, and willing to take risks. Parents expressed gratitude for the resources provided, noting how they had transformed their children's outlook on education. And students themselves began dreaming bigger, daring to envision futures they once thought impossible. For Keanu, the greatest reward wasn't the accolades or media coverage. It was knowing that he was making a difference, however small, in the lives of others. Every success story, every heartfelt thank you note reinforced the belief that everyone has the power to leave a lasting impact. Just as Mrs. Carter had shaped him, he was now shaping others, creating a chain reaction of kindness and inspiration that would continue long after he was gone. As he looked ahead, Keanu felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he knew he wasn't walking it alone. With Mrs. Carter's legacy guiding him and a growing network of supporters beside him, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they were, proving that even the smallest acts of encouragement could spark monumental change. One student, one teacher, one moment at a time. As Keanu's efforts to support education and mentorship continued to grow, so did the stories of transformation that emerged from his initiatives. Every school visit, every scholarship awarded, and every workshop held seemed to create ripples of change that extended far beyond what he could have imagined. Teachers began sharing anecdotes about students who had blossomed under the new programs, while parents expressed gratitude for the opportunities their children now had. But it was the personal connections, those quiet, intimate moments, that truly stayed with Keanu. One afternoon, during a visit to a middle school in a low-income neighborhood, Keanu found himself sitting at a small table in the library. The room was filled with students working on creative writing assignments as part of a program he had helped fund. He moved from group to group, listening to their ideas and offering encouragement. When he reached a boy named Marcus, something about the young student caught his attention. Marcus was scribbling furiously in his notebook, his brow furrowed in concentration. Unlike the other kids who eagerly shared their work, Marcus kept his head down, avoiding eye contact. Curious, Keanu pulled up a chair beside him. "Hey, Marcus," he said gently. "What are you working on?" The boy hesitated, glancing up briefly before looking back at his paper. "It's nothing," he muttered, trying to cover the notebook with his arm. Keanu smiled reassuringly. "I used to be just like you," he admitted. "When I was your age, I didn't like showing my work either. But sometimes, sharing it can make all the difference." Marcus looked skeptical, but eventually slid the notebook toward Keanu. Inside were pages of handwritten poems, raw, emotional, and deeply reflective. They spoke of struggles at home, feelings of isolation, and dreams of a better future. Keanu read them silently, his heart swelling with admiration. "These are incredible," he said sincerely. "You've got real talent, Marcus. Don't ever stop writing." For the first time that day, Marcus smiled. A shy, hesitant smile, but a smile nonetheless. That moment stayed with Keanu long after he left the school. It reminded him of his own journey, the countless times Mrs. Carter had encouraged him to share his voice even when he doubted its value. Just as she had believed in him, he now believed in Marcus, hoping to plant a seed of confidence that would grow over time. These interactions became a cornerstone of his mission, reinforcing the idea that everyone has a story worth telling, and that believing in someone can be the first step toward helping them believe in themselves. Back home, Keanu poured his energy into expanding the reach of his programs. With the help of educators, community leaders, and volunteers, he launched a nationwide campaign aimed at providing resources to schools in underserved areas. The initiative included everything from updated textbooks and classroom supplies to training sessions for teachers on how to foster creativity and resilience in their students. At the heart of the campaign was a simple yet powerful message: every child deserves the chance to succeed, regardless of their circumstances. The response was overwhelming. Schools across the country embraced the program, reporting noticeable improvements in student engagement and performance. Teachers praised the emphasis on holistic development, noting how it allowed students to explore their interests and strengths. Parents, too, expressed relief and gratitude, saying they finally felt supported in their efforts to provide their children with a brighter future. For Keanu, these testimonials served as proof that the work mattered, that the time, effort, and resources invested were making a tangible difference. Despite the success of his initiatives, Keanu remained grounded, always mindful of where it all began. He often thought about Mrs. Carter, wondering how she might feel seeing the impact of her influence multiplied through his actions. One evening, unable to contain his curiosity, he called her. "How does it feel to know you're responsible for all this?" he teased lightly. Mrs. Carter chuckled, her tone warm and humble. "Oh, Keanu, it's not me. It's you," she replied. "You're the one doing the heavy lifting. I just gave you a little nudge." Her modesty only deepened Keanu's admiration for her. She had always been that way, quietly impactful, never seeking recognition for her contributions. Yet Keanu knew better than anyone how much those little nudges meant. Without them, he might never have discovered his potential or developed the courage to pursue his dreams. Determined to honor her legacy further, he decided to establish an annual award in her name, recognizing teachers who went above and beyond to inspire their students. The announcement came during a gala celebrating the achievements of the campaign. As Keanu took the stage to introduce the award, the room fell silent, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Holding the microphone tightly, he began by recounting his own experiences with Mrs. Carter. "She wasn't just a teacher to me," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "She was a guide, a mentor, and a friend. She taught me more than grammar and literature. She taught me how to believe in myself. And because of her, I'm standing here today, trying to pass that belief on to others." The audience erupted into applause as he unveiled the details of the award. Each year, it would honor exceptional educators whose dedication and compassion transformed the lives of their students. The inaugural recipient, fittingly, was Mrs. Carter herself. When she joined Keanu on stage, tears streaming down her face, the crowd rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation. It was a moment neither of them would ever forget, a celebration of gratitude, connection, and the enduring power of mentorship. In the months that followed, Keanu continued to expand his efforts, partnering with organizations focused on global education and youth empowerment. His vision grew larger, encompassing not only local communities but also countries where access to quality education remained limited. Through scholarships, teacher training programs, and infrastructure projects, he worked tirelessly to ensure that children everywhere had the tools they needed to thrive. Along the way, he encountered countless individuals whose stories mirrored his own, people who had overcome adversity with the help of a single caring adult. Through it all, Keanu remained acutely aware of the interconnectedness of life. Every person he met, every story he heard, added another layer to his understanding of the world. He realized that success wasn't measured by fame or wealth, but by the lives touched and the legacies built. By honoring Mrs. Carter's teachings and extending her influence to others, he was creating a cycle of inspiration that would endure for generations. Even as his initiatives gained momentum, Keanu made it a point to stay connected to the people, at the heart of the movement, the students, teachers, and families whose lives were being transformed. He attended graduations, visited classrooms, and corresponded with participants, ensuring that his involvement remained personal and meaningful. These interactions reminded him why he had started this journey in the first place, to give others the same gift Mrs. Carter had given him, the belief that they were capable of greatness. By the end of another year, Keanu's impact had spread farther than he could have dreamed. Thousands of students had benefited from his programs, and hundreds of teachers had been recognized for their extraordinary contributions. News outlets hailed him as a champion of education, while social media buzzed with stories of lives changed. Yet despite the accolades, Keanu remained steadfast in his humility. "This isn't my story," he often said. "It's theirs, The students, the teachers, the communities. I'm just lucky to be a part of it. For Keanu, the journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, barriers to break, and dreams to nurture. But with each passing day, he grew more certain of one thing: the power of belief. Belief in oneself, belief in others, and belief in the possibility of a better tomorrow. It was a lesson he had learned from Mrs. Carter, and it was a lesson he intended to carry with him for the rest of his life. As he looked ahead, Keanu felt a profound sense of purpose. The road stretched long and winding, lined with obstacles and uncertainties, but he walked it with confidence, knowing he wasn't alone. With Mrs. Carter's legacy guiding him and a growing network of supporters beside him, he was ready to continue building bridges, planting seeds, and lighting paths for those who followed. Together they were proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. One student, one teacher, one moment at a time. Years passed, and Keanu's commitment to education and mentorship only deepened. What had started as a personal mission to honor Mrs. Carter's influence had grown into a global movement, touching lives in ways he could never have anticipated. Yet, despite the scale of his efforts, Keanu remained grounded, always remembering the quiet moments that reminded him why he began this journey in the first place. One crisp autumn morning, Keanu received an email that stopped him in his tracks. It was from Marcus, the boy he had met during his visit to the middle school years earlier. Attached to the message was a photograph of Marcus standing proudly in front of a university building, wearing a cap and gown. The subject line read, "Thank you for believing in me." Keanu opened the email with trembling hands, his heart swelling as he read Marcus's words. "Dear Mr. Reeves," the letter began, "I don't know if you remember me, but we met a few years ago when you visited my school. I was the kid who didn't want to show you his poems. That day changed everything for me. You told me my words mattered, and for the first time I believed it. Since then, I've kept writing, not just poems, but essays, stories, and even speeches. My teachers say I have a gift, and because of your encouragement, I applied for scholarships and got accepted into college. Today I graduated with honors, and I wanted to thank you for being the person who helped me see what I couldn't see in myself." Keanu stared at the screen, tears streaming down his face. He remembered Marcus vividly, the shy boy with a notebook full of untold stories, and marveled at how far he had come. This was the kind of impact he had hoped to make, but seeing it unfold in real life left him speechless. He replied immediately, congratulating Marcus on his achievements and inviting him to stay in touch. Their correspondence marked the beginning of a friendship that would inspire both of them for years to come. Stories like Marcus's became more frequent as Keanu's initiatives expanded. Teachers wrote to share updates about students who had blossomed under the new programs, while former participants reached out to express gratitude for the opportunities they had been given. Each story reinforced Keanu's belief in the power of mentorship and the importance of creating spaces where young people felt seen, valued, and supported. Despite his growing fame and responsibilities, Keanu continued to prioritize these connections. He made it a point to attend events celebrating student achievements, whether it was a local science fair or a national arts competition. At each gathering, he took the time to speak with participants, listening to their aspirations and offering advice whenever he could. His presence often brought a mix of excitement and comfort, reminding students that success wasn't reserved for the privileged few, it was within reach for anyone willing to work for it. As his reputation as a champion of education solidified, Keanu began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and summits around the world. These platforms allowed him to amplify his message, reaching audiences far beyond the classrooms and communities he had visited personally. During one such event held in a bustling convention center, Keanu stood on stage addressing thousands of educators, policymakers, and advocates. His voice carried a mix of passion and humility as he spoke about the transformative power of teaching. "Teachers are the unsung heroes of our society," he said, his eyes scanning the crowd. "They shape not just minds, but hearts. They plant, seeds of hope in places where despair might otherwise take root, and they do it quietly, without expecting recognition or reward. But let me tell you something. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for a teacher who believed in me. Her name is Mrs. Evelyn Carter, and she taught me that every child has potential waiting to be unlocked. Because of her, I learned to believe in myself, and because of her, I'm trying to pay it forward. The room erupted into applause, but Keanu wasn't finished. He went on to emphasize the importance of collaboration, urging everyone present to join forces in creating a brighter future for the next generation. No one succeeds alone, he reminded them. We all need someone to guide us, to lift us up when we fall, and to remind us of our worth. Let's be those people for others. Let's build a world where no child feels invisible. His words resonated deeply, sparking conversations that extended long after the event ended. Educators approached him afterward, sharing their own experiences and expressing gratitude for his advocacy. Many pledged to adopt his approach, focusing not just on academics but also on fostering resilience, empathy, and self-belief in their students. For Keanu, these interactions were a testament to the ripple effect of kindness, a reminder that every act of encouragement could multiply exponentially. Back home, Keanu reflected on how much his life had changed since reconnecting with Mrs. Carter. She had rekindled a sense of purpose within him, inspiring him to use his platform for good. In turn, his efforts had created opportunities for countless others to thrive. Yet he knew none of it would have been possible without the foundation laid by teachers like her. To honor her legacy further, he announced plans to establish a permanent institute dedicated to training and supporting educators worldwide. The Evelyn Carter Institute, as it came to be called, focused on equipping teachers with the tools and resources they needed to inspire their students effectively. The launch of the institute coincided with a special tribute event honoring Mrs. Carter. Friends, colleagues, and beneficiaries of Keanu's initiatives gathered to celebrate her lifelong dedication to education. When she took the stage, flanked by Keanu, her eyes glistened with emotion. I never imagined my little classroom lessons would lead to something like this, she admitted, her voice trembling. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that teaching isn't just about imparting knowledge. It's about planting seeds. And sometimes, those seeds grow in ways you can't predict. Her words echoed through the hall, leaving not a single dry eye in the audience. As the event concluded, Keanu hugged her tightly, whispering, "You planted the seed in me, and now I'm planting seeds everywhere I go. Thank you for everything." Mrs. Carter smiled, patting his back affectionately. "You're the one making the garden flourish, Keanu. I'm just grateful to have played a small part." In the years that followed, Keanu's work continued to evolve, adapting to the ever-changing needs of students and teachers alike. Technology played an increasingly vital role, allowing him to connect with classrooms across continents and provide access to resources that were once out of reach. Virtual workshops, online mentorship programs, and digital libraries became staples of his initiatives, ensuring that no child was left behind. Yet, amid all the innovation and progress, Keanu never lost sight of the human element. He understood that technology could enhance learning, but it couldn't replace the warmth of a teacher's encouragement or the joy of discovering one's potential. That's why he insisted on maintaining personal connections, visiting schools whenever possible, and staying in touch with participants through letters and calls. By the time another decade had passed, Keanu's efforts had transformed countless lives. Students who had once doubted themselves were now thriving in careers they once thought impossible. Teachers who had felt undervalued found renewed purpose in their work. Communities that had struggled with limited resources saw their schools flourish thanks to the support provided by Keanu's programs. And through it all, the bond between Keanu and Mrs. Carter remained unshaken, a beacon of gratitude, inspiration, and mutual respect. Looking back on his journey, Keanu realized that true fulfillment came not from accolades or achievements, but from the connections forged along the way. Every smile, every thank you note, every success story was a reminder of the power of human connection. He had set out to honor Mrs. Carter's legacy, but in doing so, he had created a legacy of his own, one rooted in compassion, humility, and an unwavering belief in the potential of others. As he sat in his living room one evening, surrounded by photographs and mementos from his travels, Keanu felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, but he faced them with confidence, knowing he wasn't walking it alone. With Mrs. Carter's teachings guiding him and a growing network of supporters beside him, he was ready to keep planting seeds, nurturing dreams and lighting paths for generations to come. Together, they had proven that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. One teacher, one student, one moment at a time, they had shown the world what was possible when people believed in each other. And for Keanu, that was the greatest gift of all.